Most people buy the wrong CPU and it silently bottlenecks their entire PC. And the worst part, you can't see it on the spec sheet. Clock speed, core count, threads, none of that tells you the real gaming performance. Gaming performance depends on way more. Cache, IPC, memory hierarchy, PCIe lanes, motherboard VRMs, power limits, cooling, and even the socket you choose. So in this video, I will break down every variable that actually matters for gaming in a way that finally makes sense. So you can pick the right CPU for your budget and your games. If you're interested in only a single game, the easiest thing to do is just look up benchmarks for that specific title. Usually though, we're interested in multiple games and we are going to use the CPU for several years, so our game library and genre preferences will change over time. Because of that, it's more useful to look at performance across a whole stack of games and see how the CPU performs on average compared to other CPUs. When testing the CPU, it's important to benchmark at 1080p, with every other component being as strong as possible. That way, the CPU is the limiting factor, not the GPU or something else. There will always be some variation between tests, so make sure you look up benchmarks from multiple different sources and compare results instead of just trusting a single chart. In simple terms, higher clock speed means each core can do more work per second, so faster is generally better for gaming, especially for the 1% lows and responsiveness. But clock speed alone doesn't tell the full story. A newer CPU at 4.8 GHz can easily outperform an older CPU at 5.0 GHz due to architectural improvement and IPC, which stands for instructions per clock. So treat frequency as a within the same generation comparison, not across very different generations. For gaming in 2026, you ideally want at least 6 cores and 12 threads. Going from 4 cores to 6 cores is a big upgrade in modern titles. Going from 6 cores to 8 cores can still help, especially for heavy background tasks like streaming, recording, or running lots of apps at once. After 8 cores, you hit a pretty strong diminishing return for pure gaming. 10, 12, or 16 cores are great for heavy productivity workloads, but they often don't add much FPS in games compared to a good 6 or 8 core chip at the same price. So, for a gaming focused build, the sweet spot is usually a strong 6 or 8 core CPU. And as a side note, on Intel CPUs, remember that P cores matter far more for gaming than E cores. E cores help with background tasks, but they don't boost FPS in the same way. Cache is the very fast memory that sits directly on the CPU. The more cache you have, and the smarter the design, the less often the CPU has to wait for data from RAM. For gaming, a larger L3 cache can noticeably improve performance in some titles, especially in competitive shooters and open world games. That's why some 3XD or extra cache models can perform extremely well for gaming even at lower clock speeds. So, when comparing CPUs of the same generation and similar price, more cache is usually better for gaming. Your CPU doesn't just talk to RAM directly. There's a whole memory hierarchy. Registers on L1, L2, and L3 cache on the CPU itself, then system RAM, then your SSD and HDD. Data that's closer to the CPU is much faster, but much smaller. Cache hits are very fast. Going out to RAM is much slower. Going out to storage is much slower. That's why both cache size and RAM speed and timings matter. On modern platforms, faster DDR4 or DDR5 with reasonable timings can give you a few extra percent of FPS and smoother 1% lows. Different CPU platforms also have different sweet spots for RAM speeds. For example, specific DDR5 speeds might line up best with the CPU's internal fabric, giving you better latency. It's also worth checking what RAM speed your chosen CPU or platform is happiest with. Your CPU also decides which generation of PCIe that you're gonna get, either generation 3, 4, or 5, and how many lanes are available for your GPU and your NVMe drives. For a typical gaming build with a single GPU and 1 or 2 NVMe SSD, most modern CPUs are totally fine. You'll get at least PCIe 4 for your GPU and main SSD, which is more than enough for gaming. But if you want lots of high-speed storage, capture cards, or multiple NVMe drives, all running at full speed, then PCIe lanes start to matter more. In that case, check how many lanes the CPU and chipset provide and how they are split between GPU, SSDs, and other devices. The socket on the motherboard has to match the socket on the CPU, so the price of a compatible motherboard should also be considered. Maybe there's a good deal on a motherboard for one socket type, but not the other. That affects overall value. Multiple generations of CPUs can sometimes use the same socket. Choosing a socket that still has new CPUs being developed for it means that you'll have better upgrade paths in the future. You can drop in a future CPU without replacing anything else. If you buy into a dead socket, No new CPUs will be released for it. What you can buy now is basically also what you can buy a few years from now on. As an example of a now dead socket, we have AM4, which supported Ryzen 1000 to Ryzen 5000. AM4 has been succeeded by AM5, which so far has had Ryzen 7000 and Ryzen 9000, and is still alive and likely to be used for at least one more Ryzen generation. When exchanging your CPU for a new one in the same motherboard, check whether your motherboard needs a BIOS update to support the new CPU. Some older boards won't boot with the newer CPUs without an update. There are two main brands for CPUs. Intel uses names like the Core i3, i5, i7, and i9. Roughly speaking, i3 is the entry level, i5 is the mainstream gaming level, i7 is the high-end level, and i9 is the enthusiast or heavy productivity level. But Intel changed their naming scheme recently with the previous generation of CPUs. So instead they're now called Core Ultra 9, Core Ultra 7, Core Ultra 5, Core Ultra 3. So they essentially just replaced the I with Core Ultra, and note that they also have slightly changed what the tires mean. Core Ultra 3 is the cheapest option, but is mainly only available in Asia. Core Ultra 5 is the entry level or mainstream gaming level. Core Ultra 7 is the mainstream gaming level, and Core Ultra 9 is still the enthusiast or heavy productivity level. The extra letters tell you special features. K stands for unlocked for overclocking, F means there's no integrated graphics, and KF means that it's both unlocked and there's no integrated graphics. Let's do Core Ultra 7 265 KF as an example. Core Ultra 7 is the general tire of the CPU. 2 means generation, but it is a little odd since Core Ultra started on 2. 6. This is again the sub-tire, but in this case, all of the Core Ultra 7 tires have sub-tire 6. They all end on a 5 because, well, 5 looks cool, I guess. K means it's unlocked and can be overclocked, and F means that it does not have integrated graphics. AMD uses Ryzen 3, 5, 7, and 9 in a similar way. Ryzen 3 is for entry, Ryzen 5 is for mainstream gaming, Ryzen 7 is high-end, and Ryzen 9 is for enthusiasts. A name like Ryzen 7 90X100 X3D breaks down like this. 7 is the tire, which in this case is Ryzen 7. 9 is the generation, so it's the 9000 series. The zeros can sometimes be used to identify slight upgrades, usually by writing 50 instead. And the X3D just means that it has extra cache. The important thing is that the newer generations don't just add extra cores or slightly higher clocks. They usually come with IPC improvements, so a newer 6-core CPU can outperform an older 8-core CPU in games. If you imagine a simple graph of generations on the bottom and instructions per clock on the side, each generation steps up by maybe 5 to 15%. Stack a few generations and suddenly a modern mid-range chip is far ahead of an older flagship on the same clock speed. Next consideration: how much wattage does the CPU need? Besides increasing your electricity bill, higher wattage also has 4 main consequences. First, does the motherboard support that much power to the CPU? Some motherboards only have a single 8-pin EPS connector for the CPU, meaning they can typically supply around 300 watts. More expensive boards with 8 plus 4 can go to roughly 450 watts, and 8 plus 8 can go higher still. Higher power draw also means that the motherboard needs stronger VRMs. In general, if the motherboard has more EPS connectors, it also tends to support higher wattage, but that is not always true for budget boards, especially if you plan to overclock. Good airflow within the case can help keep the VRMs cool, but only up to a certain point. Higher CPU wattage means more heat to get rid of. That requires a larger and more expensive cooler. High wattage CPUs may also need a good AIO water cooler, especially if you plan to overclock. If your CPU cooler is air-cooled, it relies on case fans supplying it with cool air. A hot, airflow-starved case will make even a good cooler struggle. So higher power CPUs need to have better case ventilation. Finally, more CPU power draw increases the total wattage requirement of your system. That means that you need a stronger power supply, which again adds to cost. Some CPUs include integrated graphics. They cost a bit more, but they can be extremely useful for troubleshooting. For example, if your GPU dies, or you're waiting for a new GPU to arrive, you can still use the PC. For budget or troubleshooting friendly builds, a CPU with integrated graphics can be worth the extra small cost. Overclocking sounds cool, more performance for free, but there are some trade-offs. You usually need a more expensive CPU, K or X series, a more expensive motherboard with a stronger VRM, and better cooling. The actual performance gain in games is often relatively small, especially on modern CPUs that already boost aggressively. In some cases, pushing too far can affect stability, and it may have warranty implications depending on the manufacturer. For most budget and mid-range gaming builds, it's usually better value to buy a slightly stronger CPU or GPU out of the box rather than spending extra on overclocking focused parts. For lower powered CPUs, the included stock cooler may actually be enough, especially if you're not overclocking. It won't be the quietest or the coolest option, but it can save you money if the budget is tight. If you're running a mid-range, high-power CPU, or you care about noise levels, upgrading to a decent aftermarket cooler is usually worth it. How much of your total budget should you allocate to the CPU? It's not a fixed percentage, it depends on both your budget and your target resolution. On a low or mid-range budget, your money usually goes farther if more of it goes into the GPU. For example, a 1080p assaulted mid-range CPU with a stronger GPU would usually beat an expensive CPU with a weak GPU. As the budget goes up, it makes sense to invest a bit more into the CPU so it doesn't bottleneck a powerful GPU, especially at high refresh rates. At 1080p, the CPU matters more because the GPU isn't fully stressed and the CPU can become the bottleneck. At 1440p and 4K, the GPU usually becomes the main limiter, so you can get away with a good enough CPU and spend more on the graphics card instead. As a rough guideline, I like to look at the CPU plus the motherboard plus the CPU cooler as a combined bucket that I want to spend about 25% on. There's a baseline price for each component in a PC, but after a certain point, when you already have all the bare necessities of the PC in place, it then makes sense to dump all excess budget into the CPU and GPU. Hence, the percentage of budget allocated to the CPU usually goes up with the budget. That was a lot of information to keep track of. If you don't want to track all of that manually, head over to MaxMyBuild.com. We factor in all of these compatibility checks automatically, while also looking at benchmarks and current pricing of all the components. You just put in your budget and needs, and the tool ensures you get the best performance for your budget. If this guide helped you avoid a bottleneck, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.